The other animals humans eat, use in science, hunt, trap, and exploit in a variety of other ways have a life of their own that is of importance to them apart from their utility to us. They are not only in the world, they are aware of it and also of what happens to them. And what happens to them matters to them. Each has a life that fares experientially better or worse for the one whose life it is. Like us, they bring a unified psychological presence to the world. Like us, they are somebodies, not some things. In these fundamental ways, the non-human animals in labs and on farms, for example, are the same as human beings. And so it is that the ethics of our dealings with them and with one another must rest on some of the same fundamental moral principles.
I'm not sure I even knew what a vegan was, actually, before the time I became one. I became a vegetarian in 1978, I think it was, after I visited a slaughterhouse. And I stopped eating meat immediately. I ate fish for about another year or so until I read something about fish being sentient. I wasn't sure if fish could feel pain. And then in 1982, I guess it was the fall of 1982, I was clerking for Justice Sandra Day O'Connor on the United States Supreme Court. And Capitol Hill at that time was a rather economically depressed place. There were a lot of stray animals, many stray animals, and they would often get hit by cars. It was quite terrible. I remember once having an injured animal, and I called the Washington Humane Society, and they sent over the disease control officer, who was a woman named Ingrid Newkirk. And so she came to the court and she picked up the injured dog, and we got into a discussion about, she said to me that I should consider becoming a vegetarian, and I said, well, I was. And she asked me if that was for moral reasons, and I said, yes, indeed it was. And that Friday night, she and Alex came over and had dinner at our house. At some point in the evening, Ingrid went to the refrigerator, and she saw that I had milk in the refrigerator and cheese and ice cream in the freezer, and she proceeded to throw it all in the garbage. And I asked her why she was doing that, and she explained to me that if I took this seriously, I needed to think about being a vegan. I didn't even know what a vegan was. I was not even aware at that time that there were people who did not eat any animal products whatsoever. And so we had a discussion about it, and the next day she brought me a book called Fettered Kingdoms, written by a guy named John Bryant, who was British. And it was about animal exploitation as a general matter, and he basically described the use of animals and the various connections between meat and dairy and things like that. And it was about 70 or 80, it wasn't very long, it was about 70 or 80 pages. I read it, it was a Saturday, and I read the book. And I haven't eaten a dairy product since then. It became clear to me that veganism had to be the moral baseline of anything that was going to call itself an animal rights movement. And it became clear very quickly.
Well, I was 21 years old, and I borrowed money to go to a rock concert. I didn't have the money to go to it, but somebody knew that I really liked the band. And when I got to the concert, I noticed that on every seat there was a pamphlet. And the pamphlet talked about how animals would be used for the forthcoming holidays in various ways. For example, being given as gifts, and then maybe not liked so much in a few months down the road when they were no longer a puppy. Eaten at the table, given as a fur, so their pelts being used and so forth. And it went through many ideas of how human animals use other animals. And I thought, well, somebody came to a concert and with the idea of passing out all these pamphlets and putting them out on all these seats, how fascinating. So after I read the pamphlet, which was extremely educational, I thought, well, I'd find this person. And I wound up outside, so I only heard the concert when people opened the door going in and out. And so it was a big deal because, as I said, I did borrow money. But I got the CDs since then, so I'm okay with this. And I talked to somebody who had recently changed his whole life and decided that he was going to live in a way that didn't exploit animals. And he was very interested in human rights as well as animal rights. That really came through. And I decided, just by being educated about the uses of animals, that I would become an animal advocate.
The people who were the rights people were by and large vegans. They got it. They understood that if animals have real moral significance, if animals have rights, if they have a right not to be treated as our commodities, well, then that logically implies we can't eat them, we can't wear them. I mean, whatever else it implies, it implies you can't eat them, you can't wear them, you can't use them for various purposes.
Who is it who should have rights, whose interests should be respected? Anyone who has them. Generally, the way people look at this is if the animal can get away, if there's some sort of painful stimulus, for example, and you see the animal swim away, run away, fly away, then that animal knows, I'm conscious of my own being, I need to get away. And any animal who's conscious, that's what I look at. And of course, if the animal is unconscious but could become conscious, I still mean any group of animals who that have consciousness, I think, should have their interests respected. You decide you're going to become a vegetarian, you sort of push out animal products from your life. It's sort of a negative decision. You stop eating this, and you stop eating this, and you stop eating that. I think it's important to look at this again from the issue of domination. All right? If you look at vegetarianism as the relinquishing of your place on the top of the heap to stop dominating other animals, then you're going to look at this differently. It's not what you're going to stop eating today, next month, next year. It's how quickly can I remove the products of exploitation from my life? All of them. So vegetarianism is a diet. It's a question about what I'm going to eat and what I'm not going to eat. Veganism is a way of thinking. It's a way of respecting other beings, humans and non-humans alike. It's a revolutionary idea, and it was started by a person who believed that this would change civilization radically, but that it would create the first culture that really had a claim to calling itself a civilization.
The predicate for veganism is already set. Most of us already accept all of the moral views that are the predicate for becoming a vegan. We all believe it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering and death on animals. All right? So Now the next question becomes, what do we mean by necessity? Well, whatever it means, whatever abstract meaning it has, if it has any meaning whatsoever, its minimal meaning has to be that it's wrong to inflict suffering and death on animals for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. Because if it's all right to inflict suffering and death on animals for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience, then you've got a loophole that's now so large you could drive a truck through it. So if the moral notion that we all accept, if that has any meaning, then it's got to be the case that we can't inflict suffering and death on animals for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. Okay. Problem is, 99.9999999% of our animal use can only be justified by reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. It's got to go. If we are at all, if we mean what we say, we have no choice. Veganism is the only rational, logical response to accepting that it is morally wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering and death on animals. When you explain it to people this way, people say, well, gee, I understand that. I'm not sure, I don't know. I don't know, I don't know that I'm going to become a vegan or not yet. But you've got me thinking. I now don't think it's crazy. I used to think it was crazy. I don't think it's crazy. I now understand what you're saying. I need to think about it. And that's my view. As long as I got you there, as long as I got you to that point, then I've got you thinking.